Hello and welcome to today's edition of the Daf Yomi, doing Tractate Masechet Berchorot, and it's Daf 17 Omadei. So just continue from the last Omad. Granted, according to Rav Yehuda, who says that in exempting the firstborn status, the first Tana descended the two generational levels. This is what Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said to him. Even until 10 generations, the offspring are exempt. But according to Rav Huna, who says that the first Hannah did not descend to any generational levels, what is the meaning of the phrase even until 10 generations? In what response, Rav Huna could have said to you that the statement of Rav Shimon ben Gamliel is referring to the second case of the Mishnah, where the Jew established the offspring in place of the mothers. As in that case, the first Hannah also descends to generational levels. The Gemara comments, Tasha, more common here an objection to the opinion of Rav Yehuda from the Mishnah with regard to one who accepts animals as part of a guaranteed investment from a Gentile. The direct offspring are exempt, and the offspring of the direct offspring are not exempt. This is apparently a conclusive refutation of the opinion of Rav Yehuda, who said that the offspring of the direct offspring are also exempt. The Gemara explains that Rav Yehuda could have said to you, I will say that the Mishnah means that they, the direct offspring, and the offspring are exempt. When the Mishnah said the offspring are exempt, it is referring not to the offspring of the original animals given to the Jew, but to the offspring of those offspring. The Gemara notes that there are those who say that there is a different version of this exchange. The Mishnah is actually written as they, the direct offspring, and the offspring are exempt, which is apparently a conclusive refutation of the opinion of Rav Huna. The Gemara explains that Rav Huna could have said to you, one could say that the Mishnah means that they, i.e. the original animals given to the Jew and the offspring are exempt, but the offspring of the direct offspring are obligated. The Mishnah teaches, an ewe that gives birth to a goat of sorts, and a goat that gives birth to an ewe of sorts, are not subject to the obligation of a firstborn. Rav Shaya, a few Amoraim were known by this name, and the reference here is to the third generation Amorah who was born in Babylonia and lived in the Chaldea. He studied under Rav Yehuda and Rav Huna, the leading sages of the previous generation, before starting out Yisrael with Rav Hananiah, who may have been his brother, to study under Rabbi Yochanan. It is said that both Rav Oshaya and Rav Hananiah were descendants of Eli the priest, and some claim that Rabbi mentioned here was also their brother. On many occasions, Rav Oshaya would transmit braytot and examine their content, as in the Gemara here. Aside from his great aptitude for Torah study, he was also known for his exceptions as an exceptionally pious and righteous individual. Came Nahavdi and brought a braytot in his hand. With regard to an animal has the appearance of an ewe that was born to a goat, or a goat that was born to an ewe, Rabbi Meir deemed it obligated, and the rabbis deemed it exempt. Rabbi Shaya said to Rabbi, when you go before Rav Huna, ask him, with regard to what does Rabbi Meir deem it obligated? If we say with regard to the mitzvah of a firstborn, that's difficult, but doesn't Rabbi Meir agree that the firstborn of an ox in Numbers 18:17 teaches that an animal is included in the mitzvah of a firstborn only if it is an ox and it is a firstborn and its firstborn is an ox? In other words, the mitzvah of the firstborn applies only if the offspring has the appearance of its mother. Rather, Rabbi Meir's ruling was with regard the obligation of giving the first shearing wool to the priest. The Gemara asks, but if so, doesn't Rabbi Meir agree that with that which the school of Rabbi Shmuel taught, lambs whose fleece is tough, kubatim ba'azmin kasher, the obligation to give the first shearing of wool to the priest applies only to lambs, as a fleece is used to make clothing. If a particular lamb's fleece is tough and unfit to be used for clothing, it is not subject to the mitzvah of the first shearing and is not given to a priest. Rambam Sefer Zerayim Hilchot B'churim 10:4 Shulchan Aruch Yoreh 333:2. Exempt from ayah, not subject to giving the first shearing of wool to the priest, as is stated, and if he were not warned with the fleece of my sheep in Job 31:20, it is derived from this verse that only a fleece which is fit to warm a person, like a fleece that is soft, is classified as wool that must be given to the priest. Since the fleece of the goat-like offspring of an ewe is tough, it should be excluded from the mitzvah of the first shearing. Rabbi said to Rav Shaya, let us see, what are we dealing with here? We are dealing with an ewe that gave birth to a goat of sorts, and its father was a goat, and they disagree as to whether or not one needs to be concerned with the offspring's paternity. So what does that mean? Choshin the Zera Ha'ov. It's a matter of dispute whether the prohibition against slaughtering a parent and his offspring on the same day applies to a mother and his offspring, or to a father as well. Therefore, it is known that a particular animal is the father of a particular. If it is known that a particular animal is the father of a particular offspring, one may not slaughter the two in a single day. One who slaughters them is not flogged, as it is certain whether the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Hanania or that of the rabbis. Rambam Sefer Kedusha Hilchot Shechita 12:11, Shulchan Aruch Yodei 16:2. In terms of the matter of the prohibition against slaughtering itself and adopting on the same day, as a mayor holds that one needs to be concerned with its paternity, and therefore one is liable for slaughtering the male goat and his goat-like offspring in a single day, and the rabbis hold that one need not be concerned with its paternity. The Gemara objects. But if that is so, then let us say that they disagree on whether or not one needs to be concerned with the offspring's paternity in general. With regard to prohibition against slaughtering an animal and its offspring on the same day, which is the subject of a dispute of Hanania and the rabbis, Yichon 78b, instead of citing a dispute in the usual case of an ewe that gave birth to a goat of sorts, the Brisa should have simply stated that Rabbi Meir agreed with the opinion of Hanania, that the prohibition against slaughtering an animal and its offspring applies even to a father and its offspring. Rather, Rabbi Meir's ruling is actually with regard to the obligation of a firstborn, and here we are dealing with an ewe born to a goat. So what's the footnote? Rachel bas Oez. Some commentators maintain that the halacha in the contrary opinion of the rabbis, following the first explanation of the Gemara, i.e. that an ewe is born to a goat born to a goat born to an ewe born to a goat born to an ewe, and all not counted as firstborn, and that's from the Balatorim. The Rambam and Shulchan Aruch do not cite this halacha, apparently ruling according to the explanation of Rabashi and the straightforward meaning of the Mishnah. As the Torah Beis Yosef, Yodeya 315, see the Pirchei Teshuvah there, which means that the offspring is similar in appearance to its mother, but not to its grandmother. One stage Rabbi Meir holds, follow the appearance of an offspring's mother to determine whether or not the mitzvah of a firstborn applies, and as this offspring has the appearance of its mother, it does not have the status of an animal that resembles a different species. Accordingly, the mitzvah of firstborn applies. And one stage rabbis hold, follow the appearance of the mother of its mother to determine whether or not the mitzvah of firstborn applies. And as this offspring does not have the appearance of its mother's mother, it does not have the status of an animal that resembles a different species. Consequently, the mitzvah of firstborn does not apply. And if you were to say instead that we are dealing with a ewe born to a goat, born to an ewe, one stage Rabbi Meir holds, its ovine nature was restored to its original state. That is, since the offspring resembles its older progenitor, the mitzvah of firstborn applies. And one stage the rabbis hold, its ovine nature was not restored to its original state, and in any case where the offspring is not like its mother, it is exempt from the mitzvah of firstborn. The Gemara cites another interpretation of the Braita. Rabashi says the Braita is referring to a case where the offspring has some of the characteristics. Sheyesh bo mixas simonim, the goat-like offspring of a ewe and a ewe-like offspring of a goat are counted as a firstborn if they possess some of the characteristics of the mother. And we say the Kabbalah Hilchot Berchorot 2:6 Shulchan Aruch Yodei 315:5. And the opinion of Rabbi Meir is that of the Mishnah here, which rules that the mitzvah of firstborn applies to an offspring that has some of his mother's characteristics. And who are the rabbis who disagree with Rabbi Meir? It is Rabbi Shimon, who says the offspring does not have firstborn status unless its head and the majority of his body are similar to the appearance of his mother. According to the second explanation of the Brisa, Rabbi Meir maintains that a ewe born to a goat born to a ewe is counted as firstborn, despite the fact that it does not resemble its mother. Rabbi Yochanan says, nevertheless, Rabbi Meir concedes with regard to the goat of the new moon offering. So what does that mean? Murder Rabbi Meir b'sha'ir shavush chodesh. This applies not only to the goat sacrificed on the new moon, but also to all the goats sacrificed on the festivals, as one is stated in the Torah with regard to each of them as well, says Rashi. Offering that we require the son of a female goat. What is the reason? With regard to the new moon offering, the verse states, and one male goat for sin offering unto the Lord, in Numbers 28:15. The superfluous word one teaches that the offering must be particularly a goat, as it has been since the 6 days of creation. The Gemara asks, but is this derived here? Isn't it derived from there? When a bull or a sheep or goat is brought forth, Leviticus 22:27, as the phrase a bull or sheep serves to exclude diverse kinds, i.e. an animal born from two different species of animals, while the phrase or goat serves to exclude an animal that resembles a different species. What's the footnote? Parat nanidme. An animal that resembles a different species is qualified for sacrifice upon the altar. Consequently, an ewe-like offspring of a goat and the goat-like offspring of an ewe may not be sacrificed, even if they share some characteristics with the mother. This is because the resemblance to a different species is considered to be a permanent blemish. And to the Rambam Sefer Avodah Hilchot Isurei Mizbeach 3:5. The Gemara answers that both verses are necessary, as had the halacha been derived only from there, the verse in Leviticus, I would say that statement applies only where the resemblance to another species does not trace back to earlier generations. The Gemara is translated here in accordance with the interpretation of Rabbeinu Rashi explains that were the halacha derived only from the verse in Leviticus, it would be assumed that only an animal whose appearance differs from its mother is considered to resemble another species and is unfit for sacrifice. Accordingly, an ewe born to a goat born to an ewe would be unfit for sacrifice, whereas an ewe born to a goat would be fit. I.e., the animal does not resemble any of its progenitors, but in a case where it does trace back, I would say no, the animal is fit for sacrifice. Therefore, it is derived from the verse in Numbers that the animal must be as it had been since the 6th day of creation, and had it been derived only from here, the verse in Numbers, I would say the statement applies only with regard to an obligatory offering, which is the subject of that verse, but in the case of a gift offering, the animal does not need to resemble its mother. Therefore, both verses are necessary. According to some commentaries, the Gemara here concludes that only an animal that is as it has been since the 6th day of creation is fit for sacrifice. Accordingly, although Rabbi Meir rules that the goat-like offspring of the ewe is counted a firstborn, he nevertheless maintains that it is unfit for sacrifice under the Chazon Ish and the Grizz. Others contend that only the goat of the new moon and other communal offerings must be as they had been since the 6th day of creation. By contrast, the halacha with regard to other offerings, e.g., the firstborn is derived from the phrase or goat, and excludes only the classic case of an animal that resembles a different species, such as a lamb born to a goat. Accordingly, other animals, such as one that has the appearance of its grandmother but not its mother, are fit for sacrifice, and that's from the Sifat Emes. The Gemara cites a series of statements discussing an animal that resembles another species. Araha Bar Yaakov says, everyone concedes that one is not flogged due to the prohibition of diverse kinds for wearing its wool. One is not flogged due to the prohibition of diverse kinds for wearing linen with the wool of a ewe-like offspring of a goat, in accordance with the statement of Rav Bar Yaakov. Nevertheless, it's prohibited by rabbinic law due to the appearance of violating a prohibition, and that's in the Rambam Sefer Zerayim Chalayim 10:2 Shulchan Aruch Yodeya 298:2. As is stated, you shall not wear diverse kinds, wool and linen together, Deuteronomy 22:11. Just as linen is a material that has not changed, so too one is liable for wearing wool from an animal that has not changed, i.e. an animal whose appearance does not differ from that of its progenitors. Rav Papa similarly says, everyone concedes that the wool of an animal that resembles another species is unfit to be used as the sky blue wool of ritual fringes. Samuel Posel the wool of a ewe-like offspring of a goat is unfit to be used for ritual fringes on any garment except one made of the same material. Basis of Chaim 9. This halacha is in accordance with the statement of our Papa and Sefer Ahava. It consists 2:1, which offends, as is stated, you shall not wear diverse kinds, and you shall make yourself twisted cords, Deuteronomy 22:11-12. Just as linen is a material that has not changed, so too only wool from an animal that has not changed may be used as a sky blue wool. Rav Nachman Bar Yaakov likewise says, everyone concedes that its wool does not become ritually impure with leprous marks. Ein Samo Mitame Bin Gaim. The wool of the ewe-like offspring of a goat is not susceptible to the impurity of leprosy, in accordance with the opinion of Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Sefer Tahara Hakatum Sarah 13:3. As it is stated, and when the mark of leprosy is in a garment, whether it be a woolen garment or a linen garment, Leviticus 13:47, just as the linen of a garment has not changed, so too only a garment made of wool from an animal that has not changed can become impure with leprous marks. Amar Rav Ashi. Along these lines, we can say also that if one trellised a grapevine over a fig tree, had la hagefen al gebeit se'ena, if one trellised a grapevine over a fig tree, any wine produced from its grapes is unfit for libations, as its scent is altered. 6:10. His wine is unfit to be used for libations. What is the reason? The verse states an offering and libation, Leviticus 23:37, just as an offering must be an animal that has not changed, so too libations must come from wine produced by vines that were not changed. Ravina objects to this suggestion. By that reason, if one tree lies flax over a shrub, higa, a shrub, a camel thorn is a thorny bush with smooth, non-serrated leaves. It usually grows to a height of approximately 30 centimeters, can reach a height of 1 meter, commonly found in fields and salt marshes. It should also be considered a changed product. But if so, you cannot say that Rabbi Bar Yaakov said in his earlier statement, just as linen material that is not changed, and linen also changes according to Rav Ashi's reasoning. Rav Ashi said to Ravina, with regard to this wine, its scent has changed. What does that mean? Nistana Reicho. The quality of wine is often assessed by its scent. The wine's characteristics are determined not only by the type of grape from which it was produced, but also the circumstance in which it grew, which means that soil, climate, and environment affect the final product. Other plants located near the grapevine can affect the wine produced from it as well. With regard to that flax, its scent has not changed. Rabbeinu Gershon Mohagola claims that the scent of flax does not in fact change, but unlike wine, people do not care about this change, and therefore it is considered inconsequential. It is possible that Rabbeinu Gershon Mohagola had a slightly different version of the text here, which reads, it is not considered a change, rather than its scent has not changed, and therefore its alteration is considered inconsequential. The Mishnah. In the case of you that has not previously given birth and gave birth to 2 males, so what's the footnote? The halach in the contrary opinions of the rabbis and Maviki. Consequently, if 2 firstborn offspring seem to have emerged as one, it is assumed that one of them actually preceded the other. The priest therefore takes the lean of the 2, and both are then left to graze until they develop a blemish, at which point the respective owners may eat them. And that's the Rambam Sefer Kabbalah Hechad Berchorot 5:1, 5:13, Shulchan Aruch Yodea 318:1, and the Shach there. And both heads emerged as one. Rabbi Yoshi HaGalili says both of them are given to the priest, as is stated in the plural. Every firstborn that you have of animals, the males shall be to the Lord, in Exodus 13:12, and the rabbis say it's impossible for 2 events to coincide precisely. He after the same. Rashi and the Rambam apparently explain that it's impossible for the 2 births to have occurred at the same moment. Accordingly, the rabbis interpret the plural males in the verse as referring to the collective male offspring belonging to many individuals that are counted as firstborns. Others maintain that it is in fact possible for the births to have occurred at the exact same moment. It's impossible for people to determine this. Tosfos 17b, the Maharid al-Ghazi, who states that according to Tosfot, the rabbis agree with Rabbi Yosi HaGalili's interpretation of the verse and concede that the 2 births can occur simultaneously in theory. Nevertheless, they contend that since in practice the chances of this happening are minuscule, this possibly has no practical application, and it is not even considered a case of uncertainty. Others contend, and even according to Tosfot, the rabbis reject Rabbi Yossi's interpretation of the verse, as the Torah would not mandate a mitzvah with regard to an occurrence as impossible to determine. And that's from Ne'um Yehuda. Either births were not at precisely the same time. Rather, one preceded the other, and therefore one of the males is given to the owner and one to the priest. Rabbi Tarfon says the priest chooses the better of the two. Rabbi Akiva says they assess the value of the lambs between them, and the priest takes the lien of the two, as will be explained in the Gemara. And with regard to the second lamb that remains in the possession of the owner, since he may not partake of it due to the uncertain status as a firstborn, it must graze until it becomes blemished, at which point he may slaughter and eat it. And what's the footnote there? Rashi notes that the priest's lamb is also left to graze until it develops a blemish. It may not be sacrificed upon the altar, and it is uncertain whether or not it is actually the firstborn. It was necessary for the Mishnah to state the halacha specifically with regard to the owner's lamb, since it remains subject to the mitzvah of the priestly gift, as the Mishnah proceeds to explain. Thank you for listening. Wish you all the best, a very good week, and may there be peace in Israel soon.